how do you really evaluate information, especially when the stakes are, well, incredibly high, like with global health? I mean, after going through something like a global pandemic, how do you actually sort through all the noise? How do you tell genuine expertise, a real call to action from just speculation or maybe just pandemic fatigue talking? Today, we're doing something a bit different. Enjoy a bold new take on book coverage with this extended analysis. It's more than just a summary, though. Yeah, we'll include that too. This feature looks at how the author shapes their argument, builds influence, and crucially, earns or sometimes loses your trust. We want to give you the tools to read with sharper insight, more discernment. Should you read this book? Well, this should help you decide. And it's also pretty useful for aspiring writers thinking about persuasion. If you find this format valuable, please let us know. Your feedback really does help guide what we do next. We're diving into the big one, how we must prepare for future deadly pandemics. The authors are Michael T. Osterholm and Mark Olshaker. And just a quick note, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's NotebookLM designed for deeper, more dynamic book analysis. So let's start at the beginning. Who exactly are Osterholm and Olshaker, and what's the sort of core message they're trying to get across here?
All right. Well, Michael T. Osterholm, he's a big name in public health.
Yeah.
A very well-known epidemiologist, directs CIDRAP, that's the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy. His co-author, Mark Olshaker, is a really skilled science writer. He knows how to make complex stuff accessible. Together, what they've written is essentially a rallying cry, a call for serious pandemic preparedness.
That sounds like a powerful combination. And the timing, the context for the big one, it feels incredibly relevant, almost like a direct reaction to the last few years.
Oh, it absolutely is. It was written right in the wake of COVID-19. And, that whole experience really shone a light on some critical failures, taught some tough lessons. But it's not just looking back. They know everyone's tired that COVID fatigue is real. But their point is, despite that exhaustion, we just can't afford to ignore future readiness. They're really trying to push past the fatigue.
That's a critical point. So given that fatigue and the recent history, who are they aiming this book at? And what's the ultimate goal?
It's pretty broad, actually. Policymakers, definitely. Healthcare professionals. But also the general public, people who now understand what pandemics mean. They anticipate that skepticism, that fatigue we mentioned. So they carefully balance the technical details with a narrative that keeps you engaged. The core purpose, to persuade everyone, from governments down to individuals, that pandemic preparedness needs to be taken as seriously as, say, national defense. It's a major argument for systemic reforms and really a cultural shift towards being more scientifically vigilant.
Wow, that's a huge goal. So with such a serious message, what's the main subject and what kind of tone do they use?
The subject is intensely practical. It's about looking ahead, preparing for the next pandemic, which could potentially be even worse. The tone is, well, frank, sometimes pretty dire. You can't ignore that. But it doesn't just leave you there. It's fundamentally solution-oriented, empowering even. They sound the alarm, yes, but they also hand you a map.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more for everyone listening. How do Osterholm and Olshaker, right at the start of the big one, manage to build such a strong sense of trust and authority? What makes you sit up and listen?
Well, it really comes down to ethos, right? Their credibility, and they establish it very effectively. Osterholm's expertise is just undeniable. His background in epidemiology, his public profile, his academic work, running CIDRAP, it all carries weight. And Olshaker's role is key too. He makes sure all that deep knowledge is communicated clearly. That clarity itself builds trust. Plus, their long history working on infectious disease isn't just stated, it's woven right into the book, showing their depth of experience.
Right, so it's not just what they say, but you immediately understand who is saying it and the experience behind it. But, there are lots of experts out there. How do they make sure their voice actually cuts through?
That's a great question. They do it by grounding everything. It's not just opinion. The book relies heavily on interdisciplinary citations, established public health principles. They show their work, basically. Every major claim is backed up. This gives their warnings, their recommendations, real authority. It makes it, frankly, hard to just dismiss what they're saying. And this credibility is crucial because it makes you, the reader, take their warnings seriously, even when the solutions they propose are, well, demanding significant changes.
That makes total sense. So for you listening, when you encounter information like this, don't just look at the title, ask, how is credibility established here? Is it credentials, transparent research, or just claims? That lens helps sharpen your judgment right away. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for me. They've got the credentials, the ethos, but how do they build such a convincing, almost unshakable logical case?
Yeah, the logos, the logical appeal is incredibly strong. They're systematic about it. They review pandemic history. They meticulously analyze what went wrong and right with COVID-19. And then they present these really evidence-based proposals for the future. It's not just stories. It's packed with statistical data, detailed case studies from other outbreaks too. Very thorough.
That structure sounds really deliberate. Can you kind of walk us through the typical flow of their argument?
Sure. It generally progresses like this. First, they outline past failures in detail. Then, they describe these plausible, sometimes quite frightening, future scenarios, really painting a picture, backed by data, of what could happen. Only after establishing the problem so clearly do they lay out the detailed, actionable solutions. For instance, they use these hypothetical nightmare scenarios. Think about a virus as contagious as COVID-19, but maybe as deadly as MERS. They explore that possibility not just for shock value, but to logically demonstrate the scale of potential threats, making the case for why we need proactive measures now. It's a rational path. Problem, potential future, solution.
That's a really powerful framework. For listeners, when you're reading something, ask yourself, is this argument really backed by diverse data? Or is it just a few convenient examples? Does the author build the case step by step or jump to conclusions? Thinking about that helps you spot a truly solid logical foundation. But it's not just cold, hard facts and logic, is it? We all felt the emotional side of the pandemic. How do Osterholm and Olshaker make you feel that urgency? How do they connect policy to, well, us?
Ah, yes, the pathos,
Yeah.
the emotional appeal. And they use it very effectively but responsibly, I'd say. Pathos is about evoking emotion, fear, empathy, hope. They do this by weaving in personal touches. Osterholm reflecting on the world his grandchildren will inherit, for example. That kind of thing instantly creates an emotional connection. It shifts the threat from something abstract, intellectual, to something visceral, personal. It's hard to stay detached then.
That absolutely makes it more relatable than just numbers on a page. What other ways do they tap into emotion to make the message really land?
Well, in some parts, they almost take a mystery story approach. They turn complex epidemiology into a narrative that feels, suspenseful but still understandable. This technique doesn't just inform you, it pulls you in emotionally. It motivates you through a mix of maybe fear of what could happen, but also empathy for people who'd be affected. It's a really smart way to make sure the science isn't just understood intellectually, but it's actually felt. It drives home the human side of it all. And as you think about how these authors blend that logic and emotion so well, maybe take a moment to check out Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel. It offers AI book analysis, summaries, critiques, all aimed at inspiring reflection and rational thought.
That's a key difference, isn't it? Connecting the head and the heart. For you listening, notice how an argument makes you feel. Is it primarily hitting your logic or your emotions? And critically, is that emotional appeal fair? Or does it feel manipulative? Recognizing that is so important for understanding the real impact of any message. So pulling these threads together, ethos, logos, pathos, how does this all shape the actual craft of the book? How do they organize everything and use language to maximize the impact?
Their overall rhetorical strategy is pretty sophisticated. Let's talk organization. They cleverly mix things up. Sometimes it's chronological, like tracing the COVID-19 timeline. Yeah. Other times, it's scenario-based, like exploring that hypothetical SARS-CoV-2 outbreak they detail. They weave in case studies and solutions chapter by chapter. This keeps it dynamic and makes sure the solutions feel directly connected to the problems they've just laid out.
And the language itself, does it shift depending on who they might be talking to or what point they're making?
Oh, absolutely. The diction and style are very adaptable. They move smoothly between really clear, accessible language for a general reader and then more technical terms when needed for, say, the healthcare professionals in the audience. This does two things. It makes the book approachable for more people, but it also boosts their credibility because they can clearly speak the language of the experts too.
I did notice they often set up these sharp contrasts, like, here's what went wrong versus here's what we could do better. Is that a deliberate technique?
Very much so. That's juxtaposition and contrast used really effectively. They contrast past mistakes, not just with potential improvements, but also with those chilling fictional scenarios. This contrast powerfully highlights the potential cost of not acting and the benefits of getting prepared. It makes the argument for action feel much more urgent and compelling.
And given how divided things can feel these days, how do they manage to make this message resonate widely across different kinds of people?
They lean into appeals to shared values. Things like protecting your family, the well-being of your community, looking out for each other. These are values most people share, regardless of politics. By framing the issue around these common values, they create common ground. It makes it harder to dismiss the message as just, one side's agenda. It becomes about our shared future.
These are really insightful points about strategy. For you listening, pay attention to things like contrast. When an author draws a sharp line between two things, ask, is this fair? Is it balanced? Or is it maybe designed to push an emotional button or oversimplify things? Understanding these moves is so valuable, whether you're just reading to learn or maybe trying to write persuasively yourself.
And I think, overall, the big one really succeeds in its mission. It truly is a powerful, persuasive rallying cry. It manages to tie that emotional urgency, the personal stories, directly to the clear logic of the science and the data. That mix of hard evidence, storytelling, and very concrete policy ideas makes the message understandable and, crucially, actionable for many different readers. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how their ethical approach strengthens everything. Their recommendations are always grounded in established public health ethics. Plus, and this is important, they're transparent, they're humble, they openly admit things that went wrong in the past, things we still don't know. That honesty, that willingness to admit errors, it actually builds more trust with you, the reader. It makes their call to action feel even more credible because they're not pretending to have all the answers.
That's a really profound point. It underscores the value of looking beyond just the surface arguments, doesn't it? Understanding how authors like Osterholm and Olshaker weave together credibility, logic, and emotion to move people to action. It's more than just the facts.
Exactly. And it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? For all of us. If knowledge is only really valuable when we understand it and then use it, what's your role? What's our role in keeping up that rational preparedness, even when the immediate crisis seems over and that COVID fatigue is still lingering? How do we, individually and collectively, maintain that vigilance?
That is definitely a challenge for all of us to think about. Thanks for joining us for this analysis. Click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary. Subscribe, share, purchase via link, and think rationally. See the many genre-based book podcasts at Mindful Moments. Subscribe and nourish your mind on the go.